Alright, was that last serve backspin or topspin? It was backspin. Okay, so what defines a topspin serve? Let me break it down for you. If I'm trying to tell the difference between backspin and topspin, what's my method? It comes down to wrist action. If I'm serving a heavy backspin ball, I use a lot of wrist action to create friction. So, watch your opponent. When they toss the ball to serve, if their wrist is very relaxed, and they brush the bottom of the ball, look, what kind of serve is that? It's a backspin serve. First, the racket face is relatively flat. Second, when serving, notice that for any heavy spin, the wrist will be extremely relaxed. So, during that moment of friction, if their wrist is relaxed and brushing the bottom of the ball, what should our response be? You have to push or loop it, you can't just hit it flat. So, when receiving a standard backspin serve, you'll see them brush the bottom of the ball with a very relaxed wrist. For this type of serve, remember this when you receive, keep your racket angle more flat when you push. This is because it's a pure friction motion with less impact and more spin. So, our racket face should be as flat as possible, and on contact, the forearm must drive forward. Don't chop downwards. Because if you chop down with too vertical a racket angle, it will go into the net. So you might ask, what does a light spin serve look like? For a no spin or light spin ball, first, the racket face is relatively more vertical. The ball comes off at this angle. Generally, this is a light spin serve, not a pure no spin, because it still has a hint of backspin. This is because from the backswing, the direction of force is still downwards. So a serve with a vertical racket face and downward brushing motion, or another type you'll see, is when a player's racket is flat, but there's no friction. They just pat it over. When they just pat it, look at my wrist. A serve that's patted or served with a vertical face and a downward motion requires a specific return. If the racket face is too flat and you only push forward, the ball will pop up high. So, for this type of serve, you can tilt the racket face slightly more vertical and apply downward force. So to summarize judging spin, for both penhold and shakehand, if the wrist is very flexible and brushes the bottom of the ball, it's heavy spin. Receive with a flat racket face and push forward to create an arc. If the racket is more vertical with a downward force, or if, during the serve, you see no wrist action and just a push, a push-dominant serve like this is not a heavy backspin serve. So in this case, when you try to push, many players will pop the ball up. The reason is you're pushing the bottom of a ball that has very little spin. You should tilt the racket up a bit and apply more downward friction. With this racket face, you must adjust immediately. You have to see exactly how much wrist friction your opponent is using. If the spin is heavy and your push drops into the net, flatten the racket. If it goes too high, tilt it up slightly and push downward. You cannot use the same receiving motion for every serve. Now, for sidespin. Let's start by looking at the service motion. There are 3 things to watch. First, the racket face. To judge a side topspin serve, the racket face is generally more vertical. Watch me. Short serve. Long serve. Long serve. Short serve. Relatively speaking, every player's vertical angle is different. Some are very vertical, others less so. Some serves are backspin, others are topspin. So the angle they use will be different. When serving, to distinguish between their side topspin and side backspin, what is the most obvious indicator? A vertical racket versus a flat racket. This is the clearest way to judge side topspin versus side backspin. One is vertical, the other is flat. A more flat racket angle generally indicates side backspin, while a more vertical angle suggests side topspin. Okay, this applies to shakehand grip too, look. Side topspin. Side backspin. Side topspin. Side backspin. So, the first step is to look at the racket face. Based on whether it's more vertical or more open, you can make an initial judgment. This should be your first reaction, allowing you to generally determine if it's side topspin or side backspin. What's the general rule from my experience? When serving side backspin, the racket face is usually flat. If they want to serve side topspin, the racket face will be more vertical while they apply friction. This, I feel, is the clearest technical cue when reading sidespin. Just watch that initial action, watch the racket face. Okay, I'll serve one now. You tell me if it's side topspin or side backspin. That serve was a side topspin. Why? Because the contact was more on the equator of the ball. Side backspin makes contact more towards the bottom of the ball. That is a clear side backspin. Just now, my racket face was vertical. So, it was what? A clear side topspin. Look at this racket face. This is a very clear side topspin. Most of you got that right. This one, however, is a clear side backspin. During the serve, if the racket face is relatively flat, it's side backspin. If the racket face is slightly more vertical, it's side topspin. I'll serve two balls now, you watch. Is the first or second one side topspin? First. Second. The first one was side topspin. Because if we just look at the racket face, the first serve's angle was like this. The second serve's angle was like this. So the second ball was basically side backspin. What's the second thing we look at? The direction of the follow-through. When serving this ball, the force is directed downwards. The racket tip points down. The motion is from high to low, or back and down. A serve like this is clearly what? Side backspin. Now, if the racket face is vertical, the contact point moves from back to front. The racket tip points forward, or even upwards. The force is directed forward. This type of serve is clearly a side topspin. So, first, look at the racket face. Second, watch the follow-through motion. What is that second point again? When serving, as they apply friction, look at the direction of their follow-through. A downward motion is typically side backspin. A forward or upward motion. That type of serve is side topspin. Okay, take a look. Is the serve I'm doing now side topspin or side backspin? The direction of force isn't downwards, it's forwards and upwards. Plus, the racket face is clearly vertical. It's definitely a side topspin serve. One more. Side topspin or side backspin? And why is it side backspin? First, the racket face is relatively flat. Second, on contact, I brushed it and stopped my motion short. So a serve like this is definitely what? Side backspin. Now for the third, and very important, point. During the serve, pay attention. Focus on the exact instant of contact between ball and racket. For example, if contact is here, or here, after the ball is struck, is it side topspin or side backspin? At the instant of contact, it doesn't matter if it's made here or here. After it hits the ball, where is the wrist friction directed? After contact here, which way does the wrist brush? After hitting the ball, which way does the wrist brush? After I hit the ball, did I brush downwards? Then it must be side backspin. Look, it doesn't matter where you make contact. What happens right after? Clearly, even with contact here, the point of friction, the direction of the wrist's friction is downwards. downwards, downwards. You can see immediately it's a side backspin. After we make contact, it's like this. After hitting the ball, the friction, you can watch the wrist or the forearm. Look at the arm, look at the wrist. Is the brushing motion like this? Or like this? Or like this? The motion at contact tells you the spin. If, upon contact, the brushing motion is upwards, it's side topspin. If the brushing motion is forwards, that's also a topspin serve. The key is what happens right after impact. You absolutely must focus on the instant the ball leaves the racket. If you miss that instant and only watch the final part of the motion, you will be fooled by deceptive actions. In reality, the serve is backspin, but the upward lift at the end is a fake motion. The fake makes you expect topspin, but the real spin tricks you.